You are listening to Eastman's Flycast, an adventure fly fishing specific podcast covering travel, tactics, and next level insight. Now your host, Brian Barney.
Hey, what's happening, guys? Got a brand new Eastman's Flycast for you. So this week on the podcast, I have on Ayden Castellanos. So Ayden's a next generation of fly fishermen. So he's a young man that's 17 years old and is just super passionate about fly fishing, fly tying, photography, videography, and he's super knowledgeable too. I just love getting this next generation on. It's the new school way of being able to use all the information that we've gained over the years and taking it to another level. And so if the name sounds familiar, Castellanos, I had his dad on Santino a few weeks ago. We did this great podcast. He introduced me to Ayden and just told me about his passion, and I really liked him, have him on the podcast, and he has great insight into fly fishing, fly tying, videography, and telling the stories. So made for a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think you guys are going to enjoy it too. I want to thank our sponsor for today's show, AvidMax. You can visit avidmax.com, and they have this great online resource for everything fly fishing. They also have a store that you can visit in person that's just outside of Denver in Centennial, Colorado. It's just a great company with a knowledgeable staff. You can call, you can ask questions, and their staff is all passionate fly fishermen and outdoorsmen. The store, they have absolutely everything for fly fishing and fly tying, rods, reels, flies, fly tying material. They also have some outside the box gear stuff. They have, everything, tents, sleeping bags, everything for camping, everything for dogs, for cameras, photography, bags, things of that nature. And then they also do some online fly tying courses that are really cool too. But they offer a great clearance section with everything on sale and a good selection and the best name brands. So if you guys are in the market for anything fly fishing, make sure to check out AvidMax. And you can put Eastmans 10 in the promo code and save 10% off your order. They also have a bunch of Christmas specials with cash back right now. So if you're in the market or shopping for somebody for fly fishing, make sure to check out AvidMax. With that, man, I'm getting back to it here. Kind of the bulk of my hunting season done, and back to fly fishing. It's kind of nice to take a break too. Just come back with such renewed vigor. Just been having a great time, making a few trips. The wintertime weather here in Montana has been really nice, so taking advantage of that, and then also looking towards the future, seeing what kind of trips I can book up, and trying to get over to the Olympic Peninsula to fish for steelhead. So. Plans in the works to make some great fly fishing adventures, and I just couldn't be more excited. Thanks to Eastmans for supporting this podcast. I also have Eastmans Elevated, a hunting-specific podcast. You guys can check that out. And let's get into this podcast. Ayden Castellanos, Eastmans Flycast. I'm your host, Brian Barney. Here we go. Nice work, dude. What was the video today on?
Today was a fly that I tied. I call it the weed eater.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. I love some of your ties, like the really high level stuff that you're putting out too. And I like you tie a lot of streamers, which I love to pull and love to fish, and a bunch of other, for a bunch of other species. But yeah, I dig some of your ties. That last one you posted on your IG, like that olive one, man, that thing would swim out here in Montana, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love tying streamers. I like the look that it has to it, and then everything else, because I'm trying to get more into bass fishing, for fly fishing wise. And here in Colorado, I think that fly fishing for bass could be a really huge thing that comes by here soon.
Oh, way cool. I bet you're right. There's such an aggressive fish, right? They're so fun. And it is technical to catch them. It seems like to me in my limited experience.
Yeah, they're, at least here in Colorado, I would agree that bass are a lot more wary of the baits that you throw, unlike in Texas or more southern states where the waters don't freeze over as much and those bass have all year to grow. Because these bass, they totally shut down in the winter.
Copy. Yeah, all has to do with water temperature, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Huh.
Yep. There's
Yeah,
a lot that goes into that with the water temperature.
gotcha. So they have to put all their weight on in summer, spring, and fall.
Yep, summer, spring, and fall. In the fall, they get really, really aggressive.
Oh, gotcha. Copy. That's got to be fun, huh?
Oh yeah, it's awesome. They hit like no other fish.
Huh. And are you fishing lakes or rivers for them?
Lakes mainly.
Lakes. And
Lakes and
then,
ponds.
is it pretty technical fishing those lakes? Like a lot of structure, or reading the bottom, or looking to where there's a rhyme and reason to it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So like a lot of the ponds and lakes I fish, there's a lot of structure like cattails, weed beds, rock piles and stuff like that. And so when I go and fish an area, I'm like, okay, well I have this fly for this situation and this fly for that situation. And so based on that and the species that live in that certain type of body of water, I go and I'll like, okay, I know what this fly does and I know how I'm gonna fish it, and that usually will, get me the bites depending on the day.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Sounds like you've gone down the rabbit hole and dialed on it. Like so much of it is belief in concept, or it is like learning the behaviors of the fish and what works and what doesn't. And it seems like experience is the best teacher, but it's also like learning from that experience and then being able to apply it out there.
Yeah, 100% agree because you reap what you sow in that area. Because if you're diving into it, like sure, watching videos and all that is cool, but it won't get you the experience that you need to maybe go on and like learn a fish. It's like studying different books and reading different books. That's a fish itself.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Well, dude, the conversation is already rolling. You mind if we get right into it?
Yeah, of course. Let's hop into it.
Yep. Good. So I've got Ayden on the line, just connecting with him. Super fishy dude. And so, yeah, we're just talking fishing and fishing for these bass. Like, I think it's really cool that, I say it in hunting, and I know you're a hunter too. Congratulations on your bull this year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So like I apply it to hunting so much, like just thinking about hunting different species in different habitats and how that makes me better. And the same thing fishing. Like it isn't enough just to be good at rivers. Like you want to be good at rivers and lakes, and then you want to be good in different species and in different water, in the salt, and wherever a guy can travel with his budget or whatever. But I think that's what's so cool is that you're fishing for a bunch of these different species out of Colorado. Like you just mentioned bass. I think I've seen like a bunch of pike flies that you're tying as well.
Yeah, yeah. I've been tying a bunch of pike flies recently, hoping to go up here soon.
Yeah, and then trout as well, brown trout, rainbow trout. Like I think that diversity is a good learning tool, don't you?
Oh yeah, 100% agree on that for
Yeah.
sure. Like learning about and using like my knowledge as a fisherman and angler, I like not just trying to hunt and I say hunt, but trying to catch one fish, but catch multiple species because I don't think that one fish, and for some one fish is enough. But for me, I like to go out and try to catch as many and as big as a variety of fish as that I can.
It's wild how different species, like even different species of trout, are attracted to different flies. And a lot of flies are universal. Like a lot of times you can use a fly that's made for bass or made for pike, and it works for trout too. Like it's just an aggressive eat, like on a bait fish. But I do find that some species of trout, like certain colors and then certain ties, better than other species of trout. Do you find that, or do you find that your ties work universally?
Well, well, for at least for brown trout, and so like if we go into the trout family and dive more into that, like for rainbow trout, brown trout, cut bows, whatever it may be, if it's what I've learned in my experience is if it's a brown trout, the browns they like brighter colors or they like mimicking their own kinds of colors, which is like a brown, and I usually like to use orange. I feel like a fiery orange is what really gets their attention. And if it comes to like, rainbow trout, like nymphs is what I use mainly for rainbow trout in rivers because I mainly only fish them in rivers. But when we do go for them in lakes, we tend to use more nymph patterns, caddises, and eggs, stuff like that. We rarely use um, streamers for like things like rainbow trout or cut bows. That's mainly a brown trout type of thing. And with my flies, yeah, my bass flies and pike flies kind of go into the same category. But what I've realized over the years of fishing for bass is that, at least here in Colorado, that they tend to like smaller, less big things because they're more finicky to sound and presentation. So I like to use stuff that when they approach that fly, that they're going to be able to like hunt it, and then they'll see it and they'll be like, okay, I can swallow this, and then they'll hammer it right away.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, definitely agree with you. Like those browns tend to be a predatory fish and take a streamer pretty good, but it seems like I can find the ties that those rainbows like too and key into those things. But I like what you said, like about like those predatory fish coming up to your pattern and then nailing it. They do have to swim and have to have a lot of life. I noticed your flies have a lot of life and a lot of movement to them. Like I really think that's a key to those patterns.
Yeah, 100% agree. Because if a fly is stiff to it, then it doesn't really look like a bait, more or less, or like a fish. And that's why, like in fly tying, we use like feathers and fur and synthetics and flashes, because all that stuff just moves so well. And especially when it comes to like furs and synthetics, the action that they have to it, it absorbs the water, and it has like such a squiggly motion in the water, and that's what gives it its liveliness for sure.
Yep. Are you tying a lot of trailer hooks on these things? Like it seems like these, I don't need both the hooks, but sometimes that back hook just seems to hook them better. Like I notice they hit the tail a lot, or I miss a lot. So how are you tying these to get a lot of hookups on those fish?
So with my pike flies, I like to do a double hook setup. So I tie the back end of the tail onto one hook, and then I loop. I usually do 50-pound mono, and I loop the second hook through it, and I tie it onto the first main hook. That's going to actually be the body of the fly.
Man, that's smart. Man, I really want to get after those pike. We have some here in Montana, and have them in some different lakes, like the figure eight and stuff. I think it's really cool how you bring it to the boat and then figure eight it to make sure there isn't a fish laying there, and just some of the techniques. And then it seems like they live in structure and deep holes, and then just such a predatory fish. Just their shape and the big head and the way they eat things, they look like a really fun fish to fish for.
Oh yeah, they're my personal favorite fish to fly fish for. I love pike. Pike are like they're just so fast. When they strike at something, they hammer it like nothing else that I've ever seen. And that's where they get their nicknames from, is the wolves of the water. And they're just amazing fish to fish for. They get really big, and the way they act and the way they move and the way they swallow a bait is much what I like to compare to as a bass, because they have such wide mouths, just with a ton of more teeth than bass do. And they even will swallow things their own size that I've heard in stories.
Oh, wild, right? When they attack something their own size or even close to it. But yeah, they they have a way that they can attack big fish, and eat them. Yeah, that's wild, man. I got to get after those things. When do you find the best time is to fish for them? Do you fish for them in the fall?
Yeah, towards the fall, it's a bit of slower fishing, but I think the best time to fish for them is as soon as that ice melts, because the stalkers have just been put into the lakes, and those pike are on the hunt.
Gotcha. Yeah, we've got some lakes around here. Lakes always seem to fish really good after ice off, even for big trout, big brown trout. They seem to be cruising those shorelines. I'm not sure if it's a water temperature deal or cruising that ice shelf, but yeah, it seems to be really good fishing on those lakes right at ice off.
Yeah, yeah, especially well, and here in Colorado, we wait for that ice to melt off, and actually Mackinac lake trout, they push the rainbows off into like mainly the banks of the shore, and that's when they'll usually go and attack those fish. So I actually use basically a pike fly, or a fly 6 to 8 inches long, and the fly I find most effective is a craft fur streamer, which is generally 6 to 8 inches long.
Oh, wild, that's a big fly. That's tough to cast out there.
Yeah, definitely. I actually use a 7 to 8 weight rod, and sometimes nine. But yeah, it's such a big fly to cast out. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, depending on the wind scenario. But yeah, it's just a ton of fun to just go and cast out a big piece of meat on your line.
Man, that's really cool. So, like, being a young man, being so passionate about the outdoors and about fly fishing, what got you hooked on fly fishing versus spinner tackle?
Well, I started fly fishing when I was around 7 or 8 with my dad, and my dad actually got into it because of my uncle Levi. And we actually never thought about doing it because I was raised, typical bait on a bobber type fishing. And when I first started to do that, it opened up a whole new world for me. When we started catching these big fish on these fly lines and using such tiny little hooks and patterns, I was like, this is insane. And catching these fish that I never even dreamt of catching in my life. And it was such an experience that I just fell in love I fell in love with it right away. And ever since then, I kind of just been drawn to it more and more.
Man, that's really cool. Yeah, it's like same for me. Getting hooked on fly fishing, it just seemed like I was more in tune with the river and what was going on, and really imitating nature. The way these fish would eat it, and it just seemed like I was connected more to what I was doing. And then, just like you stated, there was so many like nuances to it, so many different styles to fish, and then what really hooks a guy is like getting into him, like being dialed in with that fly tackle and tying into fish, and it's like a labor of love. You got to put in a bunch of days and put in your time to get that experience, to be able to have one of those special days or to have a bunch of hookups. But it seems like once you can unlock that and see one of those good days, you're hooked, because I think it's like diving down the rabbit hole, and there's like no end to it as far as fly fishing and fly tying, just like you're seeing, and that challenge of it too. I think that challenge and the toughness of it and trying to figure it out and sitting on the banks and like trying to get knots out and the whole deal of the whole learning experience of trying to figure it out. Like, I think that's a big key to it. And the more you put in anything, the more you get out of it, or the more satisfaction you get. And we all love those good days, but if it was easy every day, I don't think we'd love it as much as we do.
Oh yeah, I agree. Because for me, like, I rarely have those days where I just catch a ton of fish, but I do also have those days every once in a while where I do, and it's awesome. It's the best feeling ever, and catching big fish on my own patterns is the best feeling in the world, in my opinion. But yeah, I agree. If it wasn't for, like, if fishing was easy, I don't think a lot of people would do it. And because it's not easy and it's a challenge, learning fish, studying fish, using different baits, different methods, different techniques, that all matters into just catching even one fish. And hey, I might not even catch a fish for the rest of my life, but I'm still going to just be out there trying.
Once you know the payoff, there's no quit. You know they're out there. But yeah, you do such a good job. Like you mentioned your dad mentoring you, and into fly fishing, and now you've kind of taken hold of it and taken it even further, with your fly tying and the way you look at it. And I also think it's great, like you're getting other youth out there to go fishing. Like how fun is it to be able to introduce a buddy that doesn't have that kind of mentor, and take them out fly fishing?
For me, I love introducing new people to the outdoors. It's such a passion of mine, and especially when I get to go with my buddies who have barely had any experience in outdoors at all, it's the best feeling ever because they love it. They're just so surrounded by nature, and I feel like it's a really better and deeper connection to God, at least in my opinion, because that's where I connect with Him all the time. And for like friends or just people in general that I've never been and that I take out and I'm just like, okay, well, here we go. And they're just enjoying all of it. And there's always such a huge smile on their face. And that makes me happy. That's what gives me joy when we go out and I see a smile on their face.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a big part of it for sure. And just like through this podcast, through like your YouTube channel that you put out, you're so passionate about your videos and putting those together and capturing the experience. Um, yeah, I think you're also inspiring kids and young men to go out and go enjoy those outdoors, especially the way you portray it in your videos.
Yeah. When I try to produce a video, my goal behind it is to just make it interesting and to draw people to it. Because if I can get more people drawn to this look and to this more of a big branch of outdoors. I'm just trying to make it to where I can just bring people and draw them towards it even more through my videos. Because in my videos, I try to create a different look to it, and trying to build a different video for fly tying. I've seen through watching videos of other people fly tying, I feel like there's just a certain look to it, which is cool. It's super informational, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create new videos and create a new look for any outdoor type of video, just to get people more drawn to it.
It's the video is the same way, trying to capture and tell that story. It's not easy to do. Like, I always thought hunting, like, I do the coolest adventure hunts, these big backpack style expedition up in the rocks and the cliffs. And so, like, I finally got the opportunity to start videoing it. But when I did, like, I didn't know much about video or telling that story, or I hadn't sat down and edited anything together before. And so, although I was doing these cool adventures, I didn't have all the shots to tell the viewer, and it didn't come out how I wanted it. And it seems like it's taken, it's taken years, and I'm sure it's taken you years as well, to be able to tell that story, and to get comfortable to talking into the camera, and like articulating your thoughts, but also like those little nuanced shots that you were describing it when you were talking, those little shots that you plug in, that you edit in, that helps tell the story. And there's a bunch of those little clips and little cuts that you can create with a creative eye. But it just takes work and doing it a lot and looking at it, and almost being self-critical and then trying to improve it. So where are you at that process? Like, it seems like your videos are pretty well dialed. You've been doing it a while now.
Yeah, I'm trying to just follow in my dad's footsteps and go above and beyond in his own skill level and in mine. And for when when telling a story, I've always figured that when, especially like with those cool trips that you were talking about, in my experience, you got to get every second of that trip basically. And in my experience, when I haven't done that, and whatever it may be, it comes out not looking the way I want it to. But yeah, like when it comes to filming or photo shoots, like you got to just have everything dialed in the sense of like, okay, well, what are going to be my shots? You have to have it planned out. And all those steps, if it wasn't for me doing those steps, my videos would not come together like how they are now. And actually, since me and my brother actually just did a film 2 days ago. It's about this fly that I was tying. It took us about 2 hours to do it, and it's a short little minute and a half clip, but it took us 30 or some tries for just even one shot to come together the way I wanted it. And because we took that time and we waited and we just tried our best to get this shot, it came out awesome. Like that's what really goes into the videoing. You have to get that shot that you want. It may take you a couple tries, but if you do it and you get that shot, that's what makes that video great.
Huh. Really cool. Yeah. So you get a vision of what you want that shot to look like, and then it's just looking through that viewfinder, replaying it, and then going, man, that's not quite right. It's not framed right, or that doesn't have the right feel to it, and then keep shooting it. See, and I think, like, for photos and film, like, I think the best photos and film, you have to be doing really cool things, like that authenticity, and getting those shots in the moment, and getting that, like, reaction or raw emotion. That's what I, like, really like to get or capture. And it feels like when you don't want to talk into that camera, like, that's the time to pull it out. Like when you miss, or when it's crappy weather, or when it's, capturing any of that stuff, or capturing the lighting. Like, that's what I really enjoy about it, is trying to, like, capture those moments and then be able to put those all together in a piece. But yeah, it's that's wild, man. Those videos, like, it seems like you're having a great time doing them and putting them together. I know I watched one where you went out with some buddies and you guys were bass fishing, I think.
Yeah, no, we were carp fishing.
Oh, that's what it was. That's the one I remember. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So me and my brother, I had this idea of trying to just film carp fishing because it's not a really big fish that a lot of people fish here in the U.S. And actually everywhere else in the world, mainly, it's the biggest freshwater sport fish. And I was trying to bring an idea of it, and it was my first bigger film that I've ever done. And I fell in love with it last year, and this year I brought my brother into it because he's like, hey, I want to go with you. And I was like, okay, sweet, let's go. And so I brought him into it, and I got my little cousin into it. And that's like my brother's favorite fish to fish for. It's so much fun. And when we started filming that, it took us 2 weeks to film it. And we started off with just doing little steps and planning it out. And then we just started filming like everything that we were doing. And it was so much fun doing it with my little brother because he helped out a lot. He even filmed some of it too. And doing it with him, like it was such a surreal experience just doing it with my little brother and just trying to accomplish this goal for this video that we had in our minds.
Yeah, it's really cool. It seems like for you, like really sitting down and having a plan of how the story is going to be told and how it's going to put together is a big part of like uh, of your video process.
Yeah, and I think telling a story, and not just any story, but a really interesting story and creative story is important to video making and having a different look compared to videos that are like your video, but you can set your video apart by telling a great story.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, have you been out much this fall chasing fish around?
Yeah, I just actually went fishing yesterday with a friend and we caught some little bass because we were using some little flies and figured we'd get out there while we can.
Oh, good for you before it gets too cold, huh? And then,
Yeah,
well, you fish quite a bit with your dad in the wintertime?
yeah. So we usually fish a lot of tailwaters and gold medal waters here in Colorado.
Really cool. And probably use a lot of nymphs that time of year, right?
Yeah, mainly nymphs and eggs and caddises and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like tying all bugs too. Tying is an art form in itself, like trying to figure out how those materials are going to react and then go with each other. And it seems like I can find about any bug I like and I can copy it, but it's such like a creative process when you're tying as well that it's really easy to improve on patterns or to try new stuff with patterns. Like I have my standbys that always work, and don't get me wrong, I don't change a thing on them, but it just seems like I'll tie a dozen and then I'll just be on to some different tangent. Do you find yourself creating some flies in some different tangents?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like sometimes I'll take a fly that I've seen and I get actually a lot of my ideas from my local fly shop and I'll go in there and I'll look at some patterns and I'll actually just combine the pattern and make a new pattern, I guess. And creating that or creating like for trout especially, they're so particular. But yeah, I'll go on like little tangents where I'll just like create like a dozen. I'm like, oh wait, this seems pretty cool, and then I have like some crazy fly in the end that doesn't even look like a bug.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm gonna have to try your trick. You were talking about, you really like that the orange. That must be why browns like yellows too so much. Gosh, I'm more of like an olive, black, and white guy, but I do need to have some more yellows or oranges in my box that I at least like run through a hole because I'll even swing flies in the wintertime. We have these giant rivers out here that are pretty big that we reach with the two-handed spey rods and then swing streamers through with a weighted line, and it really hunts for big fish. But my three go-to colors are olive, white, and black. I need to get like a good yellow pattern, and I know some guys have some yellows they really like, but find a good yellow pattern or an orange pattern like you're talking about for some of those brown trout. I think that would like really add to my arsenal.
Yeah, I think so too. Because if I think that a lot of people are do the patterns that you're saying, and so getting that other unique color that a fish hasn't seen, they're like, oh, I don't know what that is, but I've never seen it before, so who knows what it could be? And that's usually when they'll strike. That's sometimes when you'll hit your biggest fish is on something that those fish never expect.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, those fish evolve over the years, and their instincts are pretty keen, and it'd be naive to think that they never get fished to. Like, they have to reject artificial flies all the time to be able to live out there to grow to that next level. So I definitely think you're right. Is like sometimes that outside the box thinking, throwing a pattern they haven't seen or a color they haven't seen might just like might get that predatory instinct out of them to eat it. So I think you're absolutely right. Like some of those off patterns or those off colors might just be something they haven't seen. And that's the one thing I like about fly tying too. Because we sell all these patterns down at the shops, and they're great patterns and they work, but there's a lot of guides that are using these patterns nonstop on this river. So it seems like just having my own patterns that I like that are just a touch different but representing the same thing, but it's a pattern that these fish never get to see because I'm the only one that ties it that way. Or you kind of get your own style of tying things, and I do think that plays a role into it, is having your patterns look different. I think you catch more fish.
Yeah, I agree, because everyone, it's like painting, not everyone paints the same, and so a fly is never going to look like someone else's fly, because your own fly is how you actually express your own creativity in that way. So every fly that you or I tie, or anyone ties on their own, is never going to have the same look as a fly that is tied by another person, or that a fly that other people buy from like a fly shop, or whether it's an outlet store. It's like your own type of fly.
It is, and they're not all created equal. It seems like my patterns evolve over time. Like even my pheasant tail that I've fished forever, that I fish, in multiple different sizes, all the way from a 10 to a 16, and but it seems like over the years it just evolves to get the right length on the fibers and the right movement out of that. And it's just a simple pheasant tail, I know, but you're right, it doesn't look the same as anybody else's. And like one of my tips too is when you go into a shop to buy flies, they're not all created equal. They may have been tied by the same tire, but I look through and I high grade out of those flies. Like in the bends, like I'm not looking to grab the first one out of there. I look at each tie, or I look at a couple patterns, and I'm not a total snob like where I'm trying but I am trying to pick out the best ties, because I think they're not all created equal, and some just fish better than others. And a lot of fly tying, like at least for dry flies, like it's not only that fly aesthetically and how it looks to that fish and getting a strike. Like it's also how it functions. Like a good dry fly has to be able to float. You have to be able to see it. For me, I have to be able to mend it in that seam line so I can keep it in there. So like for me, a lot of times I'm looking for a fly that not only looks good, that I think the fish will eat, but that I can fish really well, because that means I'll keep it in the spot longer and better and get more strikes that way.
Yeah, I agree 100%, because a way a fly represents itself and presents itself on the water is super important. Because some flies, granted, if it's tied by the same person, if you have two flies that are tied by the same person, sometimes they're not always the same. Because as humans, sometimes you make mistakes, and sometimes that fly will have a mistake or a fault in it. Doesn't mean it's a bad fly, it just means that it's not tied like the rest. But when a fly is represented on the water, it's very important how it's represented, especially in the way how it reacts to like the fly line you have on, or where it is in the water channel, and how or where it is in the river. It's really important on how a fly represents itself through and through, because if that fly doesn't look right and that fish sees that fly and he's like, "Oh, that doesn't look right," they're not going to take it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Like it is all that. Like and with streamers too. I've had some streamers. Like I've got this pattern that I got from a tire that I really like, and a tire that ties a bunch of really good streamers. But this one, it's got like too much feathers and fluff and not enough weight to it where it doesn't get down, so it's really up high in the water column. So the bug looks great in my box. It looks like it's gonna fish like crazy. It's tied by a really good tire, but when I fish this thing, I don't have any confidence in it because the thing doesn't sink into the column where I want it. It doesn't sink into the spot, and I don't get strikes off it. So like it is like a lot of that fly to be able to get eats on it. It's function as well as being like a good pattern, and also like it's presentation. It's like you could have the best fly on the world, but if you can't hit your mends and keep that fly in there, there's no way a fish is going to eat it. If it's pulling out of its drift because you can't keep it going down there naturally, like that's the biggest tell for some of these fish. But then sometimes you can tie on a piece of yarn and they eat it. So maybe we look too far into it, but I think there really is something to that.
No, I agree 100% because the way you represent your fly, like there has to be a yin and yang between your rod, line, and fly. Like it all has to mesh together perfectly to get that fish. And with some flies, especially, like I tie some streamers, and the streamers that sometimes I tie, and I come out with this weird looking pattern, and I'm like, oh, this looks cool, but then I fish it, and I'm like, oh, no, I don't like this at all. And then I move on to the next fly that I tied, and I'm like, oh, I really like this one. This is sweet, so I'll just keep tying more of these. And so not every fly accommodates every kind of body of water, and that's why there's so many different varieties of flies, and that's why I find fly tying for me to be really enjoyable because I can accommodate for the waters that I have locally, and I know how the waters act and how they are in my own area and the places that I go to. So I'm like, okay, well, I want this fly to do this here and this fly to do this there, and so that's why I find fly tying to be really like special for me.
Yeah, and there's also like there's something else to it, like not even the fly line and the fly, but there is something that goes with our psyche as well. Like I think you have to believe in it to make it work. You have to fish it like you believe in it, like you think they're gonna eat it. It just seems like positive vibes catch fish, and I know that's a little hippy dippy, but I truly believe it. Like you have to have confidence in the bug you're eating, and nothing gives you confidence, like hooking a fish on it or getting them to chase it a little bit or come after it. And then it just seems like you're so, like, at least for me, like I get in that flow state then where you just believe in it and you're throwing it in every little spot and you're hunting, and I'm not really thinking about changing anything. I'm just fishing it, and that belief in that fly, that confidence, that goes a long ways on the water. Have you found that as well? As like there's a different piece to it or element to it as far as your attitude or the way that you're fishing it and belief in your bug?
Yeah, 100%. I think that the most positive fisherman catches the most fish. And when fishing, like even on those days that you have doubt, like it's better not to have doubt. It's better to just be happy that you're actually there fishing. That way you just, you have more of that positive vibe with that fly or that just being there and fishing, being in such an amazing place and fishing. And usually on those days when you don't even care about even catching the fish, you're just having a great time even being there, those are usually the best days.
You're so right. You're wise beyond your years, Hayden. Like, that is it, man. It is just enjoying our time out there and enjoying the process. And when you enjoy the process, you just catch more fish. That's when it happens, especially when you're having fun, laughing, and like it's so enjoyable to spend that time outdoors, like with family and friends. And it just seems like that, enjoying your time out there and not being frustrated or not being angry because you make a mistake or they're not eating, or you're right, like positive fishermen catch fish, and really the person that's having the most fun wins at this whole deal. Like that's the whole goal of this. And I know we all get passionate and we're charging to catch fish, but really the joy of this whole thing, man, it's just being out there. It's being out on the river and leaving our cell phones at home, or sometimes I guess we're trying to film and capture it, but like getting away from everyday life and like blending into that rivers and the mountains and stuff. So man, you're in it for the right reasons, which I think is really cool. Is you're just enjoying the process and every piece of it. And like if you can, I really think in life, like if you can chase your passion like that, things that you truly like that's a big key to being happy and happy in life in general. Like so many of these lessons we learn outdoors apply directly to our everyday life.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like being patient and waiting for that fish, or just waiting even for that animal when hunting, because I learned this year when I was elk hunting, like all the work that goes into it, because I've seen my dad do it, and I never really understood it until this year. And when I saw him do it, I was like, wow, this is insane what we're doing, and all the steps and process and the planning, the equipment we brought, just everything that went into this, and then finally just to get that one opportunity to get that animal or even to get that fish is such a payoff. But even though all those steps leading up to it, it was a lot, but I had fun doing each of those steps, especially doing it with my dad, and especially just being a part of it. And not I didn't even really care killing or harvesting elk until like later, because I was just enjoying all of it at the same time. Like, it was just so much fun through and through, and just doing it with my dad was something super special to me. And when it comes to fishing, like, sure, that end result is a lot of fun, but just all those steps leading up to fishing that fish and catching that fish is just a whole experience in itself, and that's what makes it fun.
It's really cool. Yeah, congratulations on your elk. I read your post on IG, um, Ayden_cast, and so I was reading your post about your bull. I thought that was so cool to be able to spend that time with your dad. Like, some of my fondest memories are hunting with my dad when I was a kid, and then now as an adult, continuing to hunt with him. But yeah, family and friends, and it seems like when we're outdoors or when we're doing an endeavor like your elk hunt, where you're putting so much energy and effort into it day in, day out to create this opportunity or this encounter with this bull, like it just seems like the bonds we build, uh, they're just these stronger bonds than like just having dinner with somebody or hanging out with somebody at school. When you go through that with somebody like your dad or like one of your buddies, it's like I hate to compare it to the military, but it's like a battle buddy. It's like you've been through war, and like it seems like on these adventure hunting trips and adventure fishing trips, like there's so many great adventure fly fishing trips, to the coast for steelhead and to the salt for bonefish, hiking the beaches of the Bahamas or out in the Keys on a flats boat chasing tarpon. Like, there's all these killer things you can do, but it seems like even the best laid plans, like there's always challenges and there's always things that go wrong, and it's just adapting to those. But that's like part of the adventure, and when you go through that with somebody, I just think it's such a special bond, like your elk hunting or like your fly fishing you do, for all these different species with your buddies and your dad. I just think it builds such strong connections. So I'm so happy that like you're able to build that with your dad, and then be one of these kids that are really passionate about fly fishing and about hunting and taking it all in and appreciating it, man. Uh, I I think you have like a I think you have this great future in front of you the way you look at things. It's just really fun to talk to you, Ayden, on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I totally enjoy just being out there, and I hope like with myself and the way I'm running my stuff right now, I hope I get even more kids to experience what I get to experience almost every day. And just doing that, that's what drives me. That's what gives me that fire that I have in my soul to keep going and keep doing that.
How cool. Well, I'm gonna go check out that new video you posted. That's on your YouTube page, Ayden Cast. And yeah, man, I'm gonna keep following along. Again, thanks so much for taking the time and getting on here for a conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I enjoyed it a ton too. I thank you for letting me get my voice out there, and yeah, I thank you so much.
Yep, we'll keep in touch, and you let me know if you need anything.
All right, thank you so much. You have a nice day.
You too. All right, guys, that's a wrap. Again, super fun conversation with that next generation, and I love to have in-depth conversations with these young, passionate individuals that have fallen in love with the same things that I have. So I thought it made for a great conversation. Thanks to Ayden for taking the time. Thanks to Avid Max for supporting the podcast. Thanks to Eastmans. Appreciate everything they do and their support. And yeah, excited at the direction of this podcast. I'm hoping that we can continue to put out good content and that it connects with you guys. So I got some really good guests lined up for the future here, and some good fly fishing trips. And then I've been getting out here wintertime fishing around Montana. It's been really fun. There's just nobody on the river. I have it all to myself. Um, Gosh, see, lost a couple big fish. Why is that always the case? It's like if it's a 16 to 20-inch rainbow, it's like I got him hooked so solid and he's never coming off. But the minute I hook one of those 22 to 24-inch browns, just has a way of just slipping that hook. It's just the game, and I'm just happy to be out there playing it. But man, oh man, I lost a good brown the other day. I swung up down below me, fought him all the way to the ice shelf, and I was on the edge of the ice shelf on my knees, and I had my net there, waiting for a grab at this fish, and he was kind of holding his ground. I had him close at one point, but he just wasn't ready, and then turned and kind of alligator rolled again and just came unbuttoned. Big hook too on that streamer. Barbless, which you're going to lose some fish barbless, but usually when you got them, you got them. So that was a heartbreaker. And then fishing with my buddy Charlie Gordon yesterday, and we had a great drift. We had to kind of change our plans because of the ice. It's just wintertime conditions, but we floated and fished, and gosh, I hooked a heck of a good fish in this run, and I could just tell he was heavy. I saw he breached the water a couple times down below me, and I could see a big side and big tail on him. I know it was a big next level fish, and then fought him all the way up to me to where I was right on the side of him, direct parallel pressure, which is really usually it's usually really good on big fish, is to get that direct side pressure. And God, I had a good angle on this fish. I was moving with him, and he was just so solid. I just had my rod just bent over into him, and he just wouldn't budge. He was just holding his ground like a big fish. And like right after this one, I caught a good 18, 20-inch rainbow, nowhere near the fish this one that I had on. So I don't know exactly what he was, but, I think he was a great big solid brown trout. And, God, I just had steady pressure on him, and he just popped off. And Charlie has video of the heartbreak. You know that feeling when that fish just comes off and it comes unbuttoned, and it's just like, just a little bit of heartbreak. But it's been really fun getting out, and I love this off-season fishing. I love the winter, and I love the spring, early summer. I need to fish more in the fall. I just get so tied up with hunting season. But it's been a blast. I got some great recordings coming up for you guys. So really appreciate the support on this podcast. There's so many different options to listen to out there. And I appreciate you guys that are downloading this podcast and supporting this fly fishing podcast. So hopefully we can make this thing go. So appreciate you guys, and check in with you here in a couple weeks.